plant must have, as number one, it must have room to grow. And as an individual, you must have room to grow. That's why in those verses in the parable of the sower and the seed of 13:22 of Matthew, the one who received the seed that fell among the thorns is the man who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. Too much stuff crowding your world, you don't have any room for any peace to grow because there's too much other weeds in the way. You don't have room for peace to grow because you're worried about this and you're worried about that. The cares of the world have you choked out and it's got you occupied full time. The human mind can only think one thought at a time. Now, sometimes you may feel, I got a lot of stuff on my mind. No, you don't. You got one thing at a time on your mind. Now, the human mind has the ability to do what technically is called multiplex, meaning that you can think one thing, then think another thing, then think, you can multiplex and you can alternate rapidly between one thing after another. You know, there's some people say you don't have sense, you can't walk and chew gum at the same time. You really cannot if you think about it. See, if you got to think about put one step here, then one step, you can walk and chew gum because you can do it automatically. But if you have to think about every step and then think about every chew, you'll stumble. If you got to think about this now, mash down, wrong, if you have to think about it, you really cannot walk and chew gum at the same time and think about both of them. One of them has to be on automatic. The human mind can only think about one thing at a time. So if you've got all this stuff crowding in on your world, you don't have room to grow because you've got too much stuff on your mind. That's why you need to have some prayer time. That's why you need to get up in the morning, but all this stuff, get away by yourself where you can have time to be with nothing but God. You need to clear out some of all this just to spend some quality time. You got to have room to grow. And you cannot grow, you cannot expand, you cannot get other things into your mind and spirit if it's already full. Some of you all just need to go home and just clean out your closets. You can't buy any new clothes if you don't have any room to put them in. So if you want some new fruit, but yet your basket is already full of the old stuff, you must have, number one, you must have room to grow. Number two, you have to have the right temperature. You have to have the right temperature. If you're trying to get the fruits of love, of joy, and of peace, do you know it's hard to get that frozen? It's hard to get that frozen. That's why if you go to anywhere where it's basically just a wintry climate, my son and I, we've gone and stood out on a glacier in the middle of Alaska. Nothing grows there. Plenty water, plenty sun, but nothing grows there. You got to have the right temperature. If it's frozen, nothing grows frozen. So if you want joy and peace and long suffering, all this and gentleness, you have to be warm. If you're cold, and sometimes even if you're in the middle of a cold environment, it's hard to grow those attributes because the temperature around you is just frozen. And sometimes you just have to get away for a season and go somewhere where it's warm, where you can relax and get yourself together. The right temperature is required for anything to grow. The third thing you have to have is light. Now, light is traditionally viewed in the agricultural world as the sun. But you can grow stuff without the sun. You know, a lot of folks who grow marijuana, they can't do it. They got these lights on the inside. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about that too. They got lights on the inside. But the point is you have to have light. Now, light, in a spiritual sense, is the light of understanding. You have to have understanding. See, if you don't have understanding, you will view God's good fruit as worthless. You will view love as worthless. You will view joy as worthless. You will view gentleness. Not only will you view it as worthless, you will view it as a negative quality. See, if you don't have understanding what you say, I need to be tough. I don't need gentleness, man. I need to be tough. And in some arenas, gentleness is not even admired. It's scorned upon. That's why folk like thugs. See, if you don't have light, you will look for a thug instead of someone with gentleness, all because you don't have the light of understanding. See, if you don't have proper understanding, if you walk in the darkness, the fruit that you will attract in your world and allow in your world, all that fruit's going to be bad. You've got to even have some sense to know what the good stuff is. Light is required. The fourth thing is you have to have water. And the fifth thing is you have to have air. Now, both water and air, they are a type of spirit. 80% of our body is water. 80% of all fruits, or most fruits, consist of water. And you have to have air. You have to have right spirit. I have a cat in my office right now. Got the toughest spirit I've ever seen. And I was going to sell the cat, but I have taken the cat as a personal challenge that I'm going to work with this cat in that spirit. And I had to bring it to my office. It's another long story why he's at my office. Or actually, it's a she, why she's at my office. But this cat has a spirit, and the cat had it like that when I bought her. It's a spirit like I have never seen. It's the coldest cat I've ever seen in my life. You can rub this cat, pet this cat will run, this cat will not purr, this cat, and she just naturally, like, this cat has the coldest spirit I have ever seen. And I said, I'm going to get through to this cold woman. I just made it, so I made it a point that no matter what it takes, somehow I'm going to get through to that cat. But I recognize the cat has a spirit. It's air. And see, you have to have the right spirit to grow right fruit. The spirit has to be within you. You have to have right spirit. You have to breathe it in and you have to exhale it. You have to have right spirit. The sixth thing that you need, nutrients. We learned from the last message that surrounding the seed is a portion called the endosperm. And it's a short-term food supply, but after the endosperm is used up, you've got to have constant nutrition for anything to grow. If you're going to grow your spirit, you can't do that in a vacuum. You have to constantly feed yourself some good stuff. You have to feed yourself some nourishing stuff. What you feed yourself, basically you are what you eat, especially in spiritual terms. So if you want peace and if you want joy, you can't look at a whole lot of negative stuff. You can't surround yourself with a whole lot of negative stuff. That's nutrition. That is what you are feeding your mind and your soul and your spirit. You got to have proper nutrients. And the seventh thing that you need is time. Time. It, just like that cat, it's going to take me some time to produce some fruit with that cat. I can't do it in a week. I've had already 3 weeks now, still haven't broken through to it. It may take me 3 months. It might even take 3 years. It takes some time, because some cats are tougher than others. It takes time to produce spirit and proper spirit. So these 7 things, these are the things that are required to really produce and to manifest those fruits of the Spirit. But Paul said in 1 Corinthians 3:6, he says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then neither he who plants is anything, nor he who waters, but God who gives the increase. Now he who plants and he who waters are one, and each one will receive his own reward according to his own labor. Now, all of the elements required for growth, when you really look at them, all of that stuff comes from God. We can be stewards of them. We can place it in the right environment. But light and temperature and all of the nutrients, all that stuff, air and water, all that stuff comes from God. Now, in the last two messages, I asked you to do something specific that would help develop your fruit of the Spirit. One message, I asked you to simply compliment someone every day. Wouldn't cost you a dime. Just make it a point to compliment someone every day. The last message, I asked you to forgive someone who you really had issues with. Compliment and forgive. And this time I'm going to ask you to develop just the fruit of long suffering. I want you to put yourself in the middle of something that is non-detrimental, but it really irks you. Put yourself in the middle of something that's non-detrimental, but it really irks you. It will help you to build up the trait or the character of long suffering. Because see, in order for you to develop, long suffering is basically called the ability to tolerate or to stand stuff. In order for you to develop that ability, you have to place yourself, you have to face some things. We just recently converted over to a new airbrush makeup system. And as Lucretia was putting on my makeup, I'm the last one to get the makeup on, and she said, you're the only brother who didn't jump. When I put it on James, he said, woo. And then when I put it on Charles, he said, wee. He said, you're the only one. He said, you're the only one who didn't jump. And see, I didn't jump because I'm used to stuff. I take a shower, I take a hot shower every morning, and then I turn the shower on absolute cold and stand there for 60 seconds. So I'm used to shocks and stuff. Didn't bother me. That's because I'm trained to handle stuff that's kind of rough and shocking. So if you want to develop the ability just to be able to stand some stuff. Because see, in order for you to have peace, you're going to have to be able to stand some stuff. When a whole lot of stuff just upsets you, and people, I don't know what upsets you, but you do. Some of you just get upset by traffic. If you get upset by traffic, you go to a traffic jam deliberately and sit there in the middle of it to where you can stand it. To get to the point where you say, this thing does not bother you. Some folk talking too much bother you. If that's the case, you go to somebody who you know just talk a whole lot. And you say, can I talk to you for a minute? And you just listen. Till you get the ability to where you can stand it where it doesn't bother you. In this life, you've got to be able to have long. It's one of the gifts of the Spirit. So I just, as this third thing, just go to something that's non-detrimental. Now, I don't want you to put, look, if like cigarette smoke, if that bothers you, don't you go into somewhere where somebody's smoking and just breathe that. No, non-detrimental. So you go into something that's non-detrimental and you put yourself in that situation so you can build your tolerance to it, and you'll get to the point where the irksome things of life do not bother you. God wants you to bear fruit in your life and in your world. And go and listen to this entire series of name, word, and fruit. Just go to airjesus.com and click series, and you can hear it all absolutely free. We thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. Amen.
Hallelujah. Brothers of the Word, when the voice of God is heard, brothers of the Word, there's a word from God for everyone. Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word.